Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and explore something truly fascinating. There's this unsettling, invisible force out there, quietly shaping almost every major decision we make. It's this psychological undercurrent, so deeply woven into our daily lives that we honestly barely notice it's even there. But it's absolutely crucial, capable of influencing massive elections, driving huge financial bubbles, and even dictating our own personal, deeply held beliefs.
Now, I want you to picture a busy city street. Just imagine hundreds of people all moving together in the exact same direction. Nobody is stopping to question where everyone's going. Nobody stops to ask why. Most people simply follow along. And you know what? Strangely enough, this behavior feels entirely natural. It feels safe. But it leads us to a rather haunting question. Are your choices really yours? See, we all love to believe we're fiercely independent thinkers, right? Our preferences feel deeply personal, and our beliefs feel entirely self-created.
But what if many of those choices were actually quietly, invisibly influenced by the people around you? What if the crowd has actually always been living inside you? It's an uncomfortable truth we have to face. Humans rarely operate as completely isolated minds. We really like to think of ourselves as standalone processors of pure logic, but the reality? It's much more complex and a whole lot more deeply entangled with the people around us.
Section 1. The Blueprint, an ancient survival logic. Let's see how this all builds, transitioning from our mundane reality to the deep evolutionary roots of why we conform. To truly understand why we follow the crowd, we have to travel way back to our ancient savanna. For early humans, the crowd literally represented information and survival. Think about it. If everyone suddenly ran away, danger was definitely near. If you were rejected by the tribe, isolation pretty much meant certain death. Now, fast forward and picture a modern boardroom. Our environment has completely transformed, but our biology? It really hasn't. Imagine sitting in a meeting where everyone agrees on a terrible idea. You feel that tension in your gut. A battle begins in your mind. Why? Because the ancient biological terror of standing alone remains exactly identical today. Your brain still interprets social exclusion as a literal physical threat. So herd mentality isn't about human stupidity or weakness. Not at all. It's actually a highly evolved, ancient psychological survival system. It uses social consensus as a mental shortcut for information and safety. It literally saves your brain energy. If a ton of people believe something, your automatic system tells you, hey, this is probably worth paying attention to. Rejection activates the exact same emotional systems in our brains that process physical pain. So when you conform, your brain is literally just trying to keep you safe.
Section 2. The amplification, the digital crowd. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the modern internet didn't just eliminate this ancient instinct, it actually weaponized it.
Billions. That is the massive, honestly slightly claustrophobic scale of the internet today. For the very first time in human history, we aren't just limited to the crowds in our local villages or cities. Entire populations are now gathering inside our screens. We're talking about billions of connected minds forming massive digital tribes, moving together, reacting together, and absorbing the exact same emotional currents all at once.
And how exactly do these digital tribes communicate? Through highly visible signals of approval, likes, shares, followers, views, comments. Every single one of these metrics acts like a flashing neon sign of collective validation. Think about it for a second. A video with 10 million views feels incredibly important to us before we even hit play. A post with 100,000 likes seems instantly trustworthy before we ever bother to check its accuracy. Visibility creates more visibility. We instantly trust the crowd because popularity itself has essentially become our new standard of evidence.
The crucial point here is that we are no longer just casually consuming information online. We are engaged in this constant, exhausting state of monitoring social consensus. We're perpetually watching to see what everyone else feels, what everyone else likes, and what everyone else believes. And over time, our own individual judgment slowly, quietly intertwines with all of this collective validation. Section 3. The consequence, when the crowd fails. Let's shift gears and look at the profound dangers that arise when this collective emotional wave loses its objectivity.
Because what actually happens when that collective wave gets it totally wrong? Well, history is literally littered with these collective mistakes. We've got financial bubbles where everyone buys in right up until the catastrophic collapse. Mass panics, public hysteria, social persecution where entire populations become entirely convinced of ideas that are later proven completely false.
But the absolute most unsettling part isn't just that these mistakes happened, it's that from the inside, the participants genuinely believed they were acting rationally. The individual was getting constant reinforcement. Everyone around them agreed, so to them, it just felt like the absolute truth.
This reveals a deeply disturbing reality about human nature. Constant reinforcement creates the situation where humans don't merely fear being wrong, they fear being wrong alone. The crowd provides an emotional shield, right? A kind of psychological protection, even when that exact same crowd is marching directly off a cliff. Conformity, driven by this deep-seated fear, can sometimes survive way longer than actual hard evidence.
Section 4. The mirror, the paradox of individuality. Let's turn the lens directly onto ourselves and dissect modern culture's absolute obsession with standing out and being authentic.
We live in a culture that is utterly obsessed with being unique. But following the crowd offers comfort, and unfortunately it comes with a really steep psychological cost, an outsourced identity. Excessive conformity slowly chips away at our self-trust. We start relying on trends, algorithms, and public opinion instead of personal reflection. We genuinely start to struggle to distinguish what we actually believe from what we've merely absorbed from all the noise around us. Our preferences become borrowed, our opinions become inherited.
And this creates a fascinating, almost tragic contradiction. On one hand, we crave belonging on a deep biological level. But on the other hand, we desperately crave individuality. So what do we actually do? We pursue uniqueness through collective patterns. It's wild. We adopt identities and aesthetics shared by literally millions of other people in a desperate attempt to appear fiercely original. We try our hardest to stand out by using the exact socially approved methods of standing out. Section 5. The space between, reclaiming autonomy. Let's guide this into a slightly more philosophical space, because the truth is, the crowd is a lot closer than we think.
So how do we actually break this cycle? Well, genuine freedom isn't found in completely rejecting society or retreating to a cabin in the woods. Too much independence just creates a totally different kind of isolation. Real freedom is found right here, in these steps. First, recognizing when invisible social forces are guiding you. Second, intentionally pausing to create a moment of reflection. And finally, actively questioning that collective influence. It's really all about finding that tiny, incredibly powerful space between the crowd's stimulus and your own independent choice.
As we wrap up this exploration, consider this thought. The next crowd we follow may already be forming, quietly, waiting for enough minds to believe they arrived there alone. Take a really hard look at your life today, your beliefs, the choices you just made. Strip away all the likes, the approval, the visible metrics of social validation. Ask yourself, if nobody else believed it, if nobody else approved of it, if absolutely nobody else was watching, would you still choose the exact same path?